Today on Hoopty Doodle, we point at some electrics, are impressed by a wheel,
Whoa.
fiddle with a gas tank, and identify a wrench.
That's a 24 millimeter. Alright, so this being the first motorcycle I've worked on, I'm learning a few things. One of them is the electrical system on a bike. In theory, it's not that complicated compared to a car. There's just not that much stuff. And this is an older motorcycle, so the stuff on this bike is going to be different than the stuff on a modern bike. Like, this bike does not have fuel injections. A modern bike would. This bike does not have a computer. A modern bike would. Up here on top of the bike, we've got the fuse box. The fuse box. And then down here we've got, this is the control unit. This is a spark unit. This is a flasher relay. This is CDI unit. This is regulator rectifier. Over here, this is where the actual ignition coils are back in here. You can get a better look at them from this side. So here's your ignition coils right here. There's two big ones there. And off of those come your spark plug wires right here. And that is largely the electrical system on a 1982 Honda Goldwing. Alright, so I really need to start breaking this bike down to the frame, and so I'm going to go ahead and start taking everything off of this thing with the goal of taking off the airbox and the carburetor and the electrical system and the fuel tank. And along the way we may be taking off some of the wheels. So that's the plan for right now. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to disconnect the throttle cables from the carburetor. And so you can see right there, there's actually a little nut on the bottom, and that's where this is the cable coming down. There's a little nut in the bottom. I'm going to loosen that nut, and I should be able to slide the cable off that way. There are two cables coming down. I'm going to do that on both of those, and then in theory, these will both slide off. And then later on, I should be able to slide them back on, put those little nuts back on there, and everything should go back on in the same adjustment I took it off at. Alright, so both of those are off now. So I believe I have everything disconnected so that I can take the carburetor out now. Alright, so the cable for the tachometer runs down to the fuel pump. And so I'm going to have to disconnect the fuel pump from the carburetor in order to free the carburetor from the bike. And then I've also got a cable here for the choke. Got to disconnect that as well. And that should be it. I should be able to get this guy out of here. Ta-da! Alright, so I'm going to take off the ignition coils next. And it looks like the best way to take off the ignition coils is there's a bolt right here and a bolt over here. So let's see if that works. Let's see, there's a ground wire there behind the one bolt. And then we've got some wires leading from this guy over to... They connect straight to the fuse box from there. So they come around and they connect right here. This is the connection from the ignition coils. So I should be able to disconnect this guy right here, and then we should be able to take this coil off of there. Haha. Now isn't that nice and neat? Next, let's take this guy off, the rectifier regulator here. Everything seems to be a 10 millimeter thus far. All this stuff is going to have to be relocated to a different spot on the bike once we're done chopping, because these bars are no longer going to be here. This may come in handy though, so I'm going to save it. We'll see, maybe not. Alright, and then we got wires leading down here. Wire loom runs along here, back through here. Alright, I need to start labeling stuff. Well, this is a fuel sender. I want to label things even though I might not be using them. Like the fuel sender, this goes to the fuel gauge to let you know how much fuel is in the tank. I'm probably not going to have that feature on the bobber when I'm done, so I probably won't need that wire, but it's good to know what that wire is so that I can delete it from the wire loom if I want. Alright, so I just noticed something kind of fun that I have to show you. The sensor for the brake pedal, so that the bike knows when you're braking, there's a little spring attached to a sensor that when you depress the pedal, it pulls that sensor down. Isn't that crazy? It's so simple. All right, so I want to take that off of here, and so that's just a little nut up here on the top. All right, so it looks like I can disconnect this thing by taking a little spring off, and then the whole thing just sort of slides up and out. And then there's also a wire that goes back to a ground right there. So take that guy off. I'll put this bolt back on here. That's holding on the master cylinder for the rear brakes. Then I want to fish these wires out of here as best I can, if I can. Which I might not be able to at this point. I may have to wait until I get this gas tank out of here. Alright, so back on this side, I think I have a similar issue with these wires. No clearance to get them past this gas tank here, so we're gonna have to get this gas tank out here fairly shortly. Let's just do that next. Now, I believe in order to get the gas tank out of there, I have to take the rear wheel off. So we're gonna work on that. So there's a nut on top of here. All right, so on the back side of this guy, we've got this fender liner here. I'll try and pull this guy out. That was much easier than I thought. To remove the rear wheel, we take this nut here, and there's a cotter pin in that nut. We remove the cotter pin and unscrew that nut on that side. And then over on this side, we've got this dust shield thing right there. We'll take that off. And then we've got the brake caliper as well. So the brake caliper comes off, and then there is another nut. And then there's a pinch bolt right there, that guy. And that needs to be loosened up. And then we should be able to pull the axle, the rear axle out, and the wheel should come off. I actually had to take the brake pads out in order to get the caliper off, because there's a nice little ridge on my rotor here preventing the calipers from just coming straight off of there. All right, so then I'm just gonna go ahead and bungee this guy up, this brake caliper up over here, so it's supported and not hanging by itself. And now we gotta get this wheel off. From here, it looks like it's just a matter of getting this axle out. So that means starting over here, there is a cotter pin right here. Go ahead and get the cotter pin out. That's a 24 millimeter. And then going back over on this side, we've got that pinch bolt. Gotta get that guy off. And then this should come out, in theory. That's kind of cool. That's the first time I've ever done that. It's kind of a novel experience to take the axle off of a motorcycle. I don't know why, but it's something that I think is cool. Next, we have to remove these 3 nuts that secure this final drive to the swing arm. All right, so these are 14 millimeter. All right, let's see what happens. Whoa, check that out. Look at that thing. When you move, this gear moves. Look at that. Wow. All right, gas tank. All right, so on this gas tank, it doesn't look like there's much that's holding this thing in here. A bolt, there's a bolt up here. I took that out. Other than that, it doesn't seem to be resting on anything. There doesn't seem to be any other nuts or bolts that I can tell at this point. The only thing that seems to really be keeping it in there is that there is part of the frame here. You can see this slot right there. And the tank seems to be wedged in there. There's like a little adapter or tab piece that fits into that slot. And that seems to be supporting the tank. I'm gonna try tapping against the tank and pushing it backward and out of that slot. We'll see. It seems like on the other side, the battery tray is kind of in the way. So I'm gonna remove that. The old battery tray, this is where the battery tray was. And this kind of goes in like that, and then the tank is up here and pushing back against this. It seems like this, if I can remove this, it'll help get this tank out of there. So out. All right, so today we had a good time. We got dirty. First, we identified a few things, a few major components on the electrical system. Those were kind of a mystery to me when I first started looking at this bike. So it's nice to know what those things are. And then on our way to removing the fuel tank, we took off the rear wheel. That was kind of interesting, the whole final drive part of the wheel, how that works. And we also removed the brake caliper off the rear wheel. And finally, we got the fuel tank out of the bike, which is something that there are no instructions for in the manual, by the way. That's not something they apparently intend for you to do. Next time we're either going to be doing the compression test on the new engine, or we're going to be doing we got a new engine. Or we're going to be continuing to strip down this bike some more. Depends upon how I feel. That's what it depends upon. So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot, and we'll see you next time.